Hey everyone, this is Clay with Nanobot Rock Mixtape. On this week, we discuss songs that we can't listen to anymore, the socialism of Texas swimming pools during Phase 1, the importance we all have in sharing music. We also discuss Happy Birthday by Pure Protein, No More Ghost Towns by Curious Quail, Be My Saviour by Shader, Fear by Shepparton Airplane, and Lawnmower by Sparks. This is Nanobot Rock Mixtape.
We're phasing into lies, not reopening.
We'll reopen the way we want to.
When we want to. Are you guys phased?
How we want to.
Are you guys phased with the reopening?
We're 25%. Oh, yeah, we're Phase 1, so everywhere is like 25%. We went to the pool yesterday, and it was like line of people waiting to get in, and basically like we were really lucky because the people right after us, they're like, all right, we're at capacity. Sorry, come back in 2 hours. So the kids were like, hey, we're really lucky. I'm like, yeah, you are.
So you're only allowed to be in the pool for 2 hours?
Yeah, they do. They rotate every 2 hours. And so if you're in the first group, then you have to get out and leave and let other people in.
Do they have a timer or do they check the pruniness of your fingers?
Yes, they God. Why am I trying to top that? That's perfect.
All right, hands out of the pool. Let's see your fingers.
Because Texas.
It's Texas.
Well, it's so hot down here that the pool every 50 minutes has a safety break. So from like, if you start at 10:50, they all do all their whistles. You have to get out of the pool for 10 minutes, get in the shade, drink water, all of that. And then 10 minutes later, you're able to get back into the pool. So what they do is say the pool opens at 10:50, get out for safety break, get back in at 11. At 11:50, get out for safety break, leave the pool. Let new people in.
I didn't know that Texas was so communistic, but thank you for letting me know. This is America. I want a pool. I want pruny fingers when I want pretty fingers.
Well, then you, sir, can get your own lazy river in your own damn backyard.
That's from the 85th Amendment to the Constitution, that I have rights to pruny fingers whenever I want it. Most people don't know what the amendments are anyway. They can't figure it out. Don't worry about it. That's a violation of my rights that it feels wrong. So it's...
Sir, you want pruny fingers? Go into your bathtub.
Wonder if Kirk Cameron has an Olympic-sized bathtub. No, we're not throwing back.
No throwbacks.
No throwbacks. Throw forward.
You wouldn't want to give anyone a reason to go back and listen to old episodes.
They'll have to figure that out on their own.
They will. It's the magic of archives.
Archives.
Archives. The more you listen to.
The more you listen to. That was my failed attempt at the more you know. So not to cling to the negativity and the rough sentiment that is just, let's face it, is surrounding everything, with the silver lining that super awesome, the SpaceX launch occurred and went without issue, and they're on the space station, so that's super cool. We needed a win in 2020 like that. I want to throw that out there because that's super awesome. But not to dwell on negativity or anything like that. I'm a little curious because we consume a great amount of music. There's a lot of music, and I listen to music from just really almost any decade or even century at that matter. But in most languages, I listen to music in all different languages, all different times. I consume a ton of languages. I consume. Je suis le singe. We'll speak French now.
I consume a lot of languages, and then they just kind of fall out of my mouth.
Blah, all at once. We're going to have a German, French, Spanish. Blah, blah, blah. Ich denai, je suis le singe. Oui, no. And then Spanish, I already failed that. Languages, So we consume a lot of language. God! We consume a lot of music. And it got me thinking, is there music that we just won't listen to? And well, that's a broad stroke of conversation, I suppose. We'll narrow it down. So I'm curious, Clay, is there a song that you just won't listen to, or maybe can't listen to, in the sense that you can't listen to it because it brings up a bad memory for you, or it just reminds you of a bad rafting trip? I don't know, anything. Just is there...
There's no such thing as a bad rafting trip. They're all wonderful.
Have you not seen The River Wild? Kevin Bacon was a bad rafting trip.
I have not, nor have I seen Deliverance.
So you need to watch those movies and come back and tell everybody if you truly believe that there's no such thing as a bad rafting trip. Ding, ding, ding.
I will not. But back to your question, is there a song that I just can't listen to? I don't know, is the song that immediately comes to mind is one that brings up bad memories. It's just a song that for whatever reason just hits my ears the wrong way. And I know I'll probably end up losing friends over it, but whatever. It's The Way by Fastball. Podcast over.
The way, okay, well, let's...
This is why we're friends, is because we're able to talk about this like adults.
Yeah, but...
And
wow.
And, okay, just spend a few minutes on your fainting couch, and then we'll get back to this.
I need a minute. Now, okay, let's... Okay, so The Way by Fastball. Now, I'm trying in my brain, I'm going through dozens of thoughts and ideas, because people in the past have, I hate this song, I can't stand the song, and I respect that. To each their own. Nobody needs to like good music like I do. You can like whatever you like, Clay. Just kidding. But let's elaborate on that. Why The Way by Fastball?
Well, for somebody who spends so much time describing music, I'm kind of at a loss for describing exactly what it is that I don't like about that song. Some of it is just the fact that from the minute I first heard it, it hit my ears wrong. And I don't know if it was just the beat or the singing or the subject matter. Like, I can't really tell you, but it hit my ears wrong. And then it was everywhere. I could not get away from it. It was just one of those tracks that played all the time. And when you're given something that you don't enjoy, and then you're basically force-fed it all the time. And this goes back to when there weren't quite as many options for listening to music. Like, we had one modern rock station, and so we didn't have the push button thing, so I would have to scroll through to get to the next track, or next station. I didn't enjoy it. And
I respect that. And the oversaturation, I think, is on point.
Yeah, and it has not gotten any better with time. Anytime I hear it, it's just like, oh yeah, I remember when this was on all the time, and it just annoyed the crap out of me.
See, that song's about a couple who just disappeared one day, an elderly couple, and nobody knew what happened to them. So that's fine. If you
are they with Wilson?
Oh, they stepped into the void.
Yes.
With Wilson. Way to tie that back. Way to throw back, even though we're not throwing back. That's interesting. See, All the Pain That Money Can Buy, when it came out in 1998, to me was, I absolutely loved that record. And I'll admit, The Way was probably the least listened to track on the whole album for me. I liked it. I still like it. But Fire Escape, Which Way to the Top, Warm Fuzzy Feeling, Slow Drag, Out of My Head. Which Way to the Top actually features Poe, by the way. But all these tracks in there, Nowhere Road, really, I guess it was a very impressionable time for me, but I really appreciated the songwriting and then the styles of it, and it kind of deviated from what was out there. But I guess that would have been right around the same time, within a couple years of, like, No Doubt, and they're overplayed on the rock radio stations as well, and I can't listen to them anymore. So I respect that. I see where you're coming from on that.
Well, and on the opposite of that one is Tragic Kingdom is an absolute great album, and yeah, like Don't Speak and Just a Girl got played to death, but I still remember that album really well. And so this is like a Louis XIV issue, where the first song I heard by the band just really soured me on the whole affair, and I wasn't able to get past that to listen to any of the albums.
I could respect that. They apparently came out with a greatest hits a few years later and stumbled upon that well down the road after that. But that All the Pain Money Could Buy was definitely a go-to for me. So that's interesting. I didn't see that coming from a mile away, man.
It hit you like a fastball?
It hit me. Or
like a curveball.
Doom. For the throwback Vanilla Ice moment. Doom. Fastball, man.
And you, Greg? What is yours?
The one song, I could listen to almost anything. And actually, when my son started discovering Justin Bieber, I thought to myself, oh, dear God, no. But then a friend of mine pointed out, when I had asked, what do we do to stop, the next generation from listening to terrible music like Justin Bieber? What do we do? And a friend of mine said, you appreciate the fact that they're enjoying music and you support them. To which I had no rebuttal, and it was one of those, fine moments. And thankfully the Justin Bieber appreciation was short-lived. But there's one track that I can't listen to, and it's not because it's a painful memory. It's because it is just completely and utterly painful. It is the worst track ever recorded in the history of humanity. And I have a history degree, so I am going on the record and saying, as a historian, for whatever that's worth, I will state unequivocally, All About That Bass by Meghan Trainor is the most god-awful, worst track ever recorded, period. If that is on the radio, I will change the station. If I can't change the station, I will throw the radio out the window. If I'm in the car, I will crash the car. Like, I will not listen to that track. That is the worst song ever laid down. It's just painful. I can't, it does nothing for humanity in even the most remote sense. It does nothing.
Nothing, Greg?
It detracts from humanity. It
detracts from humanity.
It sets us back to the 1924 bass epidemic that plagued Switzerland. There was no bass epidemic, but it feels like there should be. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll stop.
Okay, all right, take a deep breath now. Now, I'm going to counter your statement with the fact that I have talked to a few women who have said that song actually helps spread message of body positivity in a positive manner.
To which I would hand them a copy of Shepparton and say, if you want to know about body image and strong women, listen to this. But it sonically makes my psyche bleed. Like it's killing my soul from the inside. There's nothing to this track that actually, I guess if you can listen and get past the synthetic foundation that it's built on, and you can get to the over compressed vocals, and you can start to understand words beyond the no treble, all about that bass. If there actually are lyrics to this, then all the more power to you. But that, in my opinion, if that's the only track that you listen to, I swear to God, if you play that track right now, we're gonna have a problem.
No. I'm gonna look up I'm trying to find out the lyrics.
But if that does something for you, then by all means go ahead and do it. I'm sure that there's people still listening to NSYNC quietly on headphones in the dark of the night and jamming out and doing all of that, which is fine. It means something to you. Go ahead, crank that Spice Girls up, whatever. Do it in your own secluded mind. We don't need that song anywhere else in the world. It does not need to be played on the radio. It does not need to be played in stores. God forbid sporting events, when we get back to those, will ever play this. It should not be put out in the light of day. This should be that, if you really like it, listen to it with your headphones on in the closet and enjoy it. More power to you. You found something that you like. I don't want to hear that track. We just had a guest for a moment.
We did. My dog decided to join us.
Wonder what he has to say. See, he was coming to give his opinion about All About That Bass.
Yeah. Hudson's got some thoughts on Meghan Trainor.
And what are those thoughts? We will never know, because he has now left the room.
All right.
So enlighten us with the lyrical
as a
genius.
As a point of order, there is, not only does she talk about that she's all about that bass, no treble, but she also wants you to know that we know that ain't real. We know it's photoshopped. So again, there's all about the body image.
What is photoshopped?
We know that shit ain't real. We know that shit ain't real. We know that shit ain't real. We know it's photoshopped.
Your Honor, I rest my case. I'm looking at the lyrics right now as we gon' take it to a whole another level.
Maybe she's Cajun. We gon' take it.
So as a matter of
to the bayou.
As a matter of point here, and let the record reflect, there are virtually no other lyrics to that track except for what we have quoted, and the monotonous and psychologically draining repetition of All About That Bass. So, for the sake of humanity, I present, on the Nanobot mixtape, Meghan Trainor's All About That Bass is the worst track ever recorded. With that, we're done. Thanks for listening. We appreciate all your time.
All you're going to do is just set us all on a path to finding a song that's worse than that.
Let's do it. Seriously, if anybody has a song out there that's worse than that, and Radio Boise, the local community radio here, did an amazing, I think it's a bi-monthly, they do it only ever so often, but they, or semi-monthly, or some other severing of a month that I'm not aware of or privy to. They did an entire afternoon of what they considered terrible songs, and they were glorious. And I would listen to that show and all those tracks again and again and again, including LaCroix Boy, which is It's pretty bad, but it's no all about that bass. I'm all for that. If you have a song that you think is worse than all about that bass, go on over to Facebook or on Twitter, and in the comments of this episode, provide us with that song, and we will respond and we will listen to it. Clay will listen to it, and then I will get his opinion on it.
So what categorically makes a song bad? Is it the fact that it doesn't have any deviation? Is it the music content itself? I mean, because I could think of, we just talked about it a little bit earlier. I don't know if it was on the air or not, but Redneck's Cotton Eye Joe. I'm like, is there any other line than, if it weren't for Cotton Eye Joe, I'd been married a long time ago? Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
So if you go to a sporting event and that song comes on, the usher's going to get in the aisle and he's going to start dancing, and it's for a Jumbotron. You're welcome. It's like Gary Glitter. Like, most of that music was just made for sporting events. The whole pump, what was the
Are you telling me
jams?
I can't shake my booty to All About That Bass?
No, you can't. You cannot. The only thing that should be shooken about all about that bass is the record, until that falls off the record and it no longer exists in the course of human history. I clearly have an opinion about this track, and I hate this track.
And if you would like to debate Greg on this matter, you can email us at info@nanobotrock.com.
Let's debate. That's fine. But it's your question of what inherently makes a track. To be honest, we're in no position to say, hey, this is a good track and you need to agree with us. Not by any means. Nobody really is in any position to say that this is a good track and you need to agree with us. Because it's what it means to each individual. Sure. And I'm sure that all the way to the bank, All About That Bass is making and meaning something to Meghan Trainor. Beyond that, what makes it bad? I think of that's a tough question. But I think of like Fergie, in the sense that at the end of the Black Eyed Peas and before everyone kind of spun off into their own thing, she was recording some of the worst lyrics that I could think of. It seemed like she was in the back of a car on the way to the recording studio, and she just jotted these down like on her arm and then gets into the studio and sings them out.
Oh, come on, Fergalicious. Woo. I'm off to a great start today. Get those lips working the way that they need to.
But
come on, man. Fergalicious definition makes them boys go loco.
That's better than All About This Bass. Why? Because there's more to it. But it's not that it's necessarily just repeating itself in the most annoying delivery I could imagine for some of the most lackluster effort to writing what we will call lyrics, simply in the sense that they are vocals given to a defined song, in that it's been made into an MP3 and played on the radio, so therefore it's a song. And I'm trying to find some stretch of the imagination to.
So you're just trying to basically say it's creating a farce or a mockery out of music by saying, look, anyone can record a song. I can just make a song that has 3 sentences and put it to a beat, and look, I can make millions. Versus someone else who's putting their blood, sweat, and tears into it and can't sell more than 5 albums.
But even parodies and farces are creative energy, and even by the furthest stretch of the imagination, an intellectual thought put together to try and make them feed into the lyrics to create some semblance of a song. This is just like someone walked in while the janitor was cleaning the studio and said, crap, we're missing one more track on this album. I got an idea. And then they put it in there, and some record executive goes, I smell a single, let's get it out there. And then they put it on a record and they throw it into social media, and they tell all of these young people out there that this is cool, you must like this. So then it becomes this trend, and then society ends up at Planet of the Apes, and then monkeys are running everything, and we're in trouble. That's see what Meghan Trainor leads to Planet of the Apes. You're welcome. Don't go there, people, for the sake of humanity.
The defense has no further questions.
Okay, I'm going to take a breather here.
Yep.
Come down from Meghan Trainor. I'm
Well, and this week's subject matter is an interesting one for us, because I feel like, for the most part, we try to talk about the positivity of music and share all the great things. So for us to spend this much time on the things that are negative is kind of a different tack for us. So, I mean, you made a really good point of it, which is that music inherently is objective, subjective.
Subjective.
Opinions. It's all related to opinions. Yes, thank you. Subjective. Is it there, or there? It's all about
The bass.
not that bass.
Oh! Walked right into that one.
Like a fastball.
Oh!
But it's all about your perspective, and basically saying somebody out there, their favorite band is Justin Bieber and the Justin Bieber 5. I don't know, why is he a band now? But
I was about to ask, but go ahead.
But in their eyes, they're not wrong, and it's not my place to tell them that they're wrong to say it. It's just my place to say, yeah, but have you listened to all these other bands? And I think it's important, to share music, and that's what we're doing here. And again, with our June mixtape, we've got another 5 singles that really bring home the point of, hey, these are some amazing tracks that we think you should go listen to. And that's all we're trying to accomplish here.
I want to interject for a moment here as well, and stress that when that question was posed to me, it was, Greg, what is one track you can't listen to? That's me. The song was to me, or the question was to me.
And if I remember correctly, from you as well, you're the one who posed the question.
I was, but it's
when I posed the question to myself, I said, "Self, what are you thinking? Why would you ask me such a thing?"
Oh, self, go take a time out. Go get out of the pool until your fingers aren't wrinkly again. The fact of the matter is that if you were to ask me, and don't, but I'm making a point here, if you were to ask me, what's the second song? What's the second song you couldn't listen to? I'd be at a loss for words. And that's with all of the music that we consume, with all the music that I've listened to, I can't quickly go to a track that I can't listen to. Sure, there are tracks that maybe stir emotions and memories of things that I would rather not visit on a daily basis. But in all of the music that we've listened to in almost 10 years of doing this, and then the years that I've been alive, which again, I'm not going to say how old I am because I'm not going to age myself on this, of all that music, I can't think of another off the top of my head that I don't want to listen to or won't listen to that I would consider a quote unquote bad song or something that I just don't want to listen to. So that's twofold. On one hand, there is so much music out there that if it means something to you, support the hell out of it. Listen to it. Let the artists know that you support them. Go see them live, buy their records. If it means something to you, just grab onto it and don't let anybody ever take that away from you. Even if it's Meghan Trainor, I'll throw that out there. If you find that this song helps you be the person you want to be, don't let me or anyone else take that away from you, because that's all that music means. That's, if it's important to you, it's important, period. And that is something special that is really hard to find in almost any other aspect of our lives. And what we're doing here is we're not here to knock on music or anything like that. We're here to share music that we think is worth sharing and that you may like. Find something new. It's all about discovery and experience. That's the whole point of Nanobot Mixtape. And so in the world that is shrouded in issue and divisiveness and just stresses, find music that moves you, find art that moves you, and cling to that. Find something. And if we can just help lighten a little bit of that load by helping you discover something that inspires you, then all the better for it. And that's why we're here. It has nothing to do with us. It's everything about these artists and music and discovery and finding an out in a world that is otherwise so complex and so hard to navigate on a daily basis, that let this be that window of escape for you. That's why we're here. Sorry, another tangent by me.
Well said, my friend. Are you ready to talk about some mixtape tracks?
Absolutely. And if it just so happens to be your birthday when you're listening to this, happy birthday from Pure Protein is our first track. Clay, what can you tell me about Pure Protein?
Well, I'm just going to wait a minute and let your Casey Kasemness kind of wash over me for a minute. I've got a letter here from a listener whose birthday it is today, and they'd like you to know, Casey, I turned 41 today. No, what do I want to say about this track? It's one that I've kind of been sitting on for a little bit. I was trying to figure out a place where this fits, and this seemed a logical step this week, which worked out pretty well because, again, we are stepping into these, like, let me just ask, is there a shoegaze revival going on that I don't know about? Because I feel like we're coming across a lot of these tracks right now.
It really feels like there's a lot of shoegaze. It feels like over the last, I would say maybe 3-4 years, it's started to amp up. And it's been very subtle, very quote unquote underground. But yeah, shoegaze is on the ascent again, if you will.
People are no longer looking up at their shoes, or no, looking down at their shoes. People are no longer looking down at their shoes.
Well, I guess by definition, they're not looking, they're gazing.
Gazing, yes. The difference with this track to me is not kind of that gloomy bedroom poppy kind of haziness of like a My Bloody Valentine or something like that. This is more kind of that upbeat 90s rock. And I think that M.W. Powell, who goes by the name Pure Protein for this album, talks about when he was growing up in Mississippi that he listened to a lot of 90s rock radio that influenced this, like the Goo Goo Dolls or Gin Blossoms. And you can kind of see a lot of those influences seeping into this with kind of the more driving chords that are in it. And it really, really manifests itself in the middle of the track, because the whole beginning, you kind of get that, like, he's kind of got that flangey voice that's in the mids singing through all the verses of Happy Birthday, and it's not Happy Birthday to You, it's his own version of Happy Birthday. Don't think he's tried to rip anyone off.
That's in the public domain, so he's not ripping anybody off.
Oh, is it now in the public domain? Good.
Should be. I hope it is.
If only we had an intern to look these things up.
Intern? No, we don't have one. It's interesting if you'd like to intern with Nanobot Rock, email us. It's interesting that you pointed out the Goo Goo Dolls and Gin Blossoms. And that's a very important piece to all of this, because when I first started listening to this, I did not get Goo Goo Dolls. I did not get Gin Blossoms. Then when I started reading up on Happy Birthday by Pure Protein, I came across the Goo Goo Dolls and Gin Blossoms reference as well. And now I cannot unhear the deeply rooted Goo Goo Dolls, Gin Blossoms, kind of that late 90s alt-rock sensibility that exists within this. And it only makes me love this track even more. Pure Protein's Happy Birthday, it offers this airy vocal delivery in this almost synthetic shroud that complements the fading sunlight, if you will, sound that Pure Protein captures. When you listen to the whole 5-track debut, Winter Goes Home, which is out now, there's a very core sound that M.W. Powell has created here, and it's very identifiable, and it stays very true to itself. You're not going to get one sound out of one track, then dive into a completely different sound on the next track, anything like that. But it's almost, to me, this particular one in the 5 tracks embodies kind of if you'd imagine for a minute, maybe this rundown, industrialized, post-industrial type city, kind of like the segments of Los Angeles, if you will, kind of what you would imagine them to be. It almost embodies this oasis that is only slightly better than the rundown old architecture around it, but it's enough and it's your own that it becomes this reprieve, and it becomes this very special isolated segment in an otherwise overwhelming architecture kind of existence to me. In a weird way, it created this imagery and this very metropolitan but very secluded at the same time kind of sense that really created something special for me when I was listening to Happy Birthday.
It's an interesting type of imagery that came to your head, because I didn't get that, and what I got more was a neighborhood feel, and maybe some of that is the album art where you can see kind of like a yard with a balloon floating. But part of it to me was more in the vocal, where I'm trying to remember if it's the chorus or not, because the song is kind of structured in kind of a unique way where it's hard to get all of the different pieces out of.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a line that I always come back to where he says, I brought flowers to the back of your house, and then you cut them up and planted them in my mouth. And so I always have that image in my head listening to this song of just like this guy who's bringing flowers to, I mean, I don't know if it's a girlfriend or just a friend or even a family member, but that the person's basically just putting it back in his face the entire time, which kind of, you know, brings that kind of more dour feel to it. But to me, it was, you know, when you say bringing it to the back of your house, I'm picturing more of a single family, like neighborhood, like, suburbia or something like that. Come and stay for the weekend. Oh, what a mistake I could make. Happy last day. I'm glad you're leaving this place you hate. Are you all done? Or are you eating that piece of cake? And I'll just leave tomorrow. And I'll just leave tomorrow.
It's really interesting that we both have a different imagery for this track and kind of what it does. There's, and by all means, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's kind of this, I don't want to say it's darkness that's looming over this whole track, kind of this heaviness that exists over it, but it almost feels like the waning hours of sunlight mixed with just a long day is kind of the cloud that floats over this track in a way. It's not completely dark, it's not completely bright and shiny to me, but it's almost tired in a way. Like, and I think that was why I had trouble fitting it in certain places, is because I'm not trying to say the song is low energy, but it has that type of tired feel to it where you're just, I don't know if it's like tired of life or tired of birthdays, you know. I couldn't really tell you, like, not another one. You'll get it, kids, one day. Sign this card for Karen in accounting. Like, no, it's not one of those. That's a good way to put it. Is it's a tired feeling, but it's still that there's not a give up tired, but it's breathing life into the exhaustion almost at the same time, which that's a good way to put it. So
thanks.
So go check out Happy Birthday by Pure Protein, and if it's your birthday, Pure Protein has a message for you. Just don't plant flowers in his mouth. Clay, this is a band that I have never heard of. We certainly don't have an entire mixtape episode dedicated to interviewing the brains behind this operation. Go check out Curious Quail, Mike Shirley Donnelly interview if you'd like. But in our interview, Mike Shirley Donnelly of Curious Quail had spoken to this project that they were working on. And it is a COVID-19 relief fund effort by, how many bands are on this particular album?
It's 24 tracks. I can't remember if it's all individual bands or not, but it is a compilation trying to put together a slew of chiptune bands to, as you said, you know, help out fundraising for communities that are impacted by COVID. And there are lots of industries out there that need help, and this is their, you know, way of trying to assist with that. So they put out a compilation called Continue. There's a very, very pretty drawing of a Game Boy lighting up with life energy, I'm assuming, in a forest somewhere. It's all really cool. And I listened to the compilation, and even if we didn't know Mike and the rest of the Quails in Curious Quail, then I think this track would still stick out to me because we talked about it with Mike. They're doing a very unique thing, even in the chiptune space, where you can't necessarily put a label on this band of saying, well, they're indie, oh, they're orchestral rock, oh, they're chiptune. Like, there are some tracks on this thing that are, it's literally sounds like it's somebody playing, the music from a Nintendo game, and that's like all you get for 3 minutes, versus this actually sounds like it was a rock song where they tried to insert a Game Boy into it.
It is the Who Framed Roger Rabbit of music and Game Boy music that exists within the world in and of itself. So their bar could be very human, that in walks the video games assembly, and all of a sudden it fuses together and it exists within itself but separately. And I don't know where I was going with that, but it it really does. It bridges two worlds together. And I agree with you. I listened to this album, and No More Ghost Towns by Curious Quail really stood out to me. That's the one that really of all of them. And I fell in love with every track on here, to be honest with you. I've never been one that really sits down to listen to a great amount of chiptune per se, but in listening to this, I was fully behind it, not just because it's for a great cause, but because there's some really, really good sounds on here. And I would encourage everybody to really spend some time with it. 100% of the proceeds go to Direct Relief's COVID-19 fund. They give PPE and critical care medications to healthcare workers. Since January, they've delivered more than 4 million N95 and surgical masks, more than 2 million gloves, and tens of thousands of protective suits and other items. So it goes to a great cause. It's music that I know Clay and I have loved for years with Curious Quail, and it's a discovery in and of itself as well. You can discover new bands if you feel the chiptune, you want to dive deeper. This is a great way to start, and would highly recommend people go check it out.
Days like weeks and months like years. Different spices are mixing here. We'll all start in this together. Raise your voice and obtain. She says, pour your soul into it. This might be a ghost town tonight. Maybe you'll know that with a push it could come a night down to try. Show me it's worth it. On the path to better lives.
To the song specifically here, it just proves to me that Curious Quail gets better and better each time they step into the studio, because we've been listening to Curious Quail for years, and when this came about, it was fresh, it was new, it was energetic and powerful, and it felt like we were being teased with a Zack Snyder cut of Curious Quail that all of a sudden we want more, and give us more. What's hiding underneath, what's behind the curtain?
Well, and to that point, I feel like the chiptune has always been there. Like we've talked about it before, and that's one of their brands of music. But this track to me is, this might be a weird way of putting it, this track seems like they finally consummated the marriage, because I know, keep it kid friendly.
I just want to see where this goes. Go right ahead.
No, it's not going any much further than that. In that, I feel like most tracks, it's like you catch a little bit here or a little bit there in terms of the music, and even Rallying Cry, like I listen to, I'm like, oh, okay, they're starting to put a little more of the chiptune or the Game Boy into this. But this is a rock song. This is a great pop rock song that has a Game Boy solo. And a badass Game Boy solo at that. Like, I mean, this thing like shreds.
It does. At the 2-minute mark, it dips into the chiptune glory of what I will throw out there as the best chiptune band I've ever listened to, Curious Quail. And it makes it Mike. It makes you want to get to your feet and be part of something greater in that Game Boy solo. And I go back to the days of like the kids who would bring the Game Boy to school and they're sitting in the hallway and like behind the lockers or whatever, they're just sitting there in the dark playing their Game Boy and you're like, huh, nerd. But then when they get up on stage and they rock a Game Boy solo, all of a sudden I'm like, I was your friend in high school, man. Yeah, we're buddies. Like it's that same sentiment. Like you don't need to be a shredding on the guitar to prove your musical prowess. All of a sudden you can shred a Game Boy in a Game Boy solo and be just as badass, in my opinion. So, well played, Curious Quail. Absolutely.
Giving our shit is good, actually.
So as we said, like we're really excited for what comes next. And I know he said they're working on new music, but no guarantees when that comes out. But this definitely makes us excited for the future of this band and the future of the genre. So go check out Continue. Go check out Curious Quail. Listen to it all because it's good stuff.
What you have to, or maybe you realize no one is right when they say they give up, but we'll never organize. We gotta try. What's holding us back now is the way we're traumatized. We said goodbye to too many ghost towns on your road to paradise. We gotta try.
This isn't something that I normally say about a rock band. Well, who am I kidding? It is what I say about rock bands because this is what I usually listen to. I feel like we were in need of a summer song. And for me, I feel like Shader's Be My Saviour just helped me have one for 2020. I just feel like the energy that comes out of this Manchester power pop rock group is just kind of that jump out of the gate, yeah, type of energy that I need to bring in a summer where, you know, I go to a pool at 25% capacity and drive around with my pruny fingers with the windows open.
If you
listen back to the beginning of the episode to understand more about pruny fingers
and Texas pool capacity. If you're looking for Shader, if you start digging in and you start looking them up, you'll be met with this giant, quote, arena-sized ambition, quote, that as soon as you hit play, you realize that that is entirely possible.
Looking for some soul falling on my feet, like a shopping trolley on a pebble beach. Be my savior, be my savior, be my savior now. Someone come along and help me breathe. Having trouble living in reality. Be my savior, be my savior.
So what are they doing that makes it all possible to you?
Well, to reel that back before we get to that, I would ask the question is, I can't shake this and I apologize, but I'm going to throw it out there. What do you do when Oasis stops being Oasis?
You mean they start becoming good again?
You tighten up your laces, pick up the torch, lean into a huge rock sound, and you call yourself Shader. That's what you do. This is the band that needed to pick up the torch. If you were to have one song to represent that band that picked up the torch and could carry what is perceivably the next wave of Oasis type big sound, just something that can carry you and pick you up and get that energy going and mean something all at the same time, Be My Saviour by Shader is the track that I would put at the front of that list. The top of that list. The front
Greg,
of that
stop.
line.
You're going to give them an Oasis-sized ego.
Well, they're arena-sized ambitions, so I don't know what else you could get. My only recommendation would be don't go full Oasis. You never go full Oasis. Shader, for all intents and purposes, well, they call themselves indie rock and roll. But let's be honest here. Shader absolutely blasts the roof off of indie, not even in conversation, shouldn't be. It beelines it straight for the heart of alt rock and roll in Be My Saviour in a way that just, as you pointed out, and I will fully agree here, makes the summer song for 2020.
So as of this time, we don't have a date on when their album will be coming out, but they've got a couple singles out. And as Greg said, this is a huge sound. It's bigger than the indie arena, as he said. Please go check out Be My Saviour by Shader.
So Clay, when we put these mixtapes together, we basically start with a pool of tracks. We go through the responsible mixtape making, which is we need to identify which tracks could flow with other tracks as to not just completely jump from one side to the other and back and forth and into obscurity. But this was kind of a late entry into June's mixtape contention, and you were the one that actually pushed it up the list a little bit here. So I want to ask you, what about Shepparton Airplane's Fear made you want to throw it into this part of the mixtape?
Well, without getting all Lloyd Dobler about how we make our mixtapes, you need some sort of energy to all of it. And I feel like we really kind of raised the limits with No More Ghost Towns and then Be My Saviour. So then how do you naturally progress downhill from there into getting into something a bit slower? So this to me felt like it wasn't putting on the brakes, but it kind of allowed it to coast a little bit. And just this whole post-punk sound coupled with this feel of the Chuck Mosley days of Faith No More really just kind of helped bring this type of, a really good word that you used last week, sneer to the whole thing, that it just made it so fun. The other thing I really love about this track is, it's that kind of quirky punk sound that is a lot of fun, but then the track just keeps on building in such a good and strong way. It's like the way that I used to think about really good local H tracks, which is that they always build up to such a strong climactic finish without ever going over the top.
Shepparton Airplane's Fear has a very special place in my musical appreciation, especially over the last, say, 5-10 years, in that, I guess to walk it back a little bit, I think it's undeniable that Australia has always kind of done their own thing in their own way. And I think that's absolutely glorious. From film to music to virtually everything else, they kind of go about it in their own vision and almost unapologetically so. They had a great stint of of music and particularly movies that were, I mean, they got into that, I forget the term for it, but it's like the Mad Max post-apocalyptic style movie that Australia had just tightened up, and they were phenomenal at it. There's kind of this like survival sentiment the rest of the world sees Australia with, and it could be absolutely glorious in some of the pop we've listened to and some of the airier music that we've listened to, but also down to the post-punk core. Now, in 2016, Joy from the Peep Temple was one of the top albums of Nanobot Rock for the year. It also introduced me to the possibilities of what this post-punk Australian sound is. Now, we'd be remiss if we did not point out that the rhythm section to Shepparton Airplane is Steve Carter and Stuart Rayner from the Peep Temple. The drummer and bassist are from Peep Temple. But Shepparton Airplane is basically members of these dormant, I guess for lack of a better term, cult classic type bands, the Peep Temple and Graveyard Train, that have put together this sound that is post-punk but heavy on the punk in that, as you pointed out, sneering kind of way, but in all the best ways possible. This, to me, is how post-punk now should sound. It's got teeth, it's got grit, and that rolling bass intro and the heavy-handed riffs and that screw-it-all attitude that seems to come with the vocal delivery hand delivers this fantastic track that just energizes me.
But it never lets up either, and that's what I was kind of alluding to earlier, is you've got this great vocal delivery in the beginning in that kind of eclectic post-punk way it does, but then at the end, like, it's just got those driving power chord riffs going, and it just, I know I said it was coasting earlier, but this one just, it doesn't let up. It's just doing it in a different time signature.
Shepparton Airplane's Fear is from the 2020 release Sharks. And as we've talked about, there's a whole lot of energy here. There's a whole big sound that happens here as well. It doesn't let up. It's unrelenting in a very good way. It boils into this chaotic turmoil before slamming back down into rhythm and shuddering down at the very end. And I, for one, will be a very strong proponent go check out Sharks. The whole record is fantastic. Dive into Peep Temple's discography, check out Graveyard Train, pay close attention to this, because this is an amazing track in my book, and it's the post-punk that we need. And if you need a reprieve that might go a little bit more to the core for your summer of 2020, throw this in the mix. Clay, to wrap up the mixtape, we need a disclaimer here. To proceed from this point forward, you must be aware that what you are about to dive into and encounter will be damn near impossible to get out of your head. You will come back to this. You will be singing this probably in your sleep. You will be humming it unconsciously. And as you're mowing the lawn, this will become the anthem, and you're quite welcome. So Clay, why don't you lead us into the end of our mixtape?
I mean, you're right. The song is going to be in your head all the time. I mean, it's super catchy. It's super kitschy without ever going super saccharine. It's a whole lot of fun to listen to this track. Like, and what's really fun is that driving bass at the end of Fear just dovetails so well into the la la la.
I'm pushing on my lawnmower, lawnmower. I'm pushing on my lawnmower, lawnmower. I'm pushing on my lawnmower, lawnmower. The morning it's my lawnmower, lawnmower. The afternoon my lawnmower, lawnmower. The evening it's my lawnmower, lawnmower. The neighbors looking all at my lawnmower with jealousy and awe at my lawnmower. I'll never loan it out, not my lawnmower.
The vision that sparks this American rock and pop duo of Ron and Russell Mael, who I didn't even know that these guys had been putting out music since the early 70s. Like, this track feels like it was put together by an indie pop group from this year they almost sound like an indie pop duo that just came into being in 2020 but already knows all their stuff. So the fact that they sound like that and have been putting out music for almost 50 years is absolutely incredible. And this song is all of the great quirky fun that anyone would want from a song about one of our favorite weekend chores.
And of course, I think if you have albums like A Woofer in Tweeter's Clothing, Propaganda, Kimono My House, Whoomp That Sucker, Angst in My Pants, Pulling Rabbits Out of a Hat, gratuitous sax and senseless violins, music that you can dance to.
We have entered the part of the podcast where Greg is just reading titles out of Wikipedia.
No, there's a very important point here. Exotic Creatures of the Deep, Hippopotamus, and then the 2020 release, A Steady Drip, Drip, Drip. I think that there's a sense and sensibility that needs to come with all of this, and that is you got to know what you're going to do or what you're doing if you come out with records like that. Otherwise, you're going to fall into this Ray Stevens categorical pitfall that's going to be shelved and dusted off only ever so often.
Okay, good, because I was worried you were about going on a Nerdboy filibuster there.
My girlfriend is from Andover, Andover. She puts up with my lawnmower, lawnmower. You're pushing on your lawnmower, lawnmower. Your lawn will be a showstopper, showstopper. Your lawn will be a jaw dropper, jaw dropper.
If you kind of close your eyes and from the beginning to the end of this track, I imagine someone tightening the laces on their New Balance sneakers, flicking on the light to the garage, getting everything organized, opening the garage door with their hands tightly gripped around the handle of the lawnmower and strutting out into their like 100 square foot suburban lawn, like this tiny lawn, but they make this big to-do about it. And all the neighbors are looking on at this person who's just almost down there with scissors to trim the edges and make sure that everything's finite. It's glorious. I'm going to call it, it is cheesy on some levels, but there's so much to love from this track, aside from the absolute earworm type just hooks that it gets in you. It's probably the catchiest track you can find.
Well, and it's not only super catchy and all of that, but I feel like that whole narrative is just one side of it, and that there's the whole other like darker element to the song. Like I'm thinking of like the suburbs in Edward Scissorhands, where turns out they're the actual villains of the movie, where you've got these people that are like slavishly mowing their lawns, trying to impress each other and one up to the point where their girlfriend from Andover is leaving because it's either me or that lawnmower.
It is. It's a mix between Gary Newman and Pleasantville.
Ooh, that's a nice painting.
The poetic lyricism that lives in this paced rhythm of aerobic whimsy makes this track almost as infectious as they come. But there is kind of this Stepford Wives-ish kind of idea that's existing in the world created, which is impressive in just this one track of Lawnmower by Sparks.
Yeah, it's funny to try and think through a song that, going back to an earlier subject, there's not a ton of vocal variation to the song. Like there's a first, chorus, verse, and they don't really deviate from that much. So it's not like there's this narrative story unfolding during the track. It's just everything that we're injecting into it, and it comes with every la 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 and keystroke and drum beat that comes into this, that it's just like, it's as if the music is what's actually painting that story in that kind of poppy, quirky, kind of merry-go-round carousel repetition that is just starting to create something that's unraveling, and you just can't put your finger on it.
And if you don't come out of this humming or even singing, pushing on my lawnmower, then you are a stronger person than I am.
Well, I may come out of this podcast trying to think of what Gary Newman would have wrote about Pleasantville.
We'll leave it to the imagination. Go check out Lawnmower by Sparks, and you're welcome.
My girlfriend who's from Andover is backing up the Land Rover. It's me or it's that lawnmower. You're pushing on your lawnmower. Your lawn will be a showstopper. Your lawn will be a jaw dropper.
Thank you for spending your time with us and listening to the Nanobot Rock mixtape. We appreciate you listening and discovering new music with us. Find music that means something to you and hang on to that, because if it means something to you, it means something. I want to give a special shout out to everyone who has listened to our episodes and shared those episodes and spread the word of Nanobot Rock mixtape to the corners of social media and the world that be. We don't advertise. We don't have any advertisements, so this is word of mouth, and it's meant to show appreciation and love for music as a whole. So we appreciate everybody who takes a second to subscribe and like and share on the various platforms, because it's not about us. It's about the music, and you're helping the music get out there. So that means a lot.
I was just about to say, the important thing to me and to us is that the music is getting shared. So if there's something in here that really stood out to you, share it with a friend, share it with a band, like get people in touch with each other. Like we all get better by sharing what we love.
The power of people is the strongest power we have. So cling to that and be part of that. Be part of the power of people. Keep supporting local and independent music, and keep listening to local and independent music and supporting them. And we will see you on the next mixtape.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, Clay. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Ah.
Who?
Werewolves of London.